Hello, I'm Associate Professor Emma Scotter, and I'll be giving you a short video about what biomedical science is and where it can take you. I'm giving you this video on behalf of myself and my co-chair of undergraduate biomedical science, Dr. Rochelle Singleton, and I have our contact details at the end of this talk for you to get in touch with us with any further questions. You may be wondering what biomedical science is. Well, you've come to the right place. This is a specialization within the Bachelor of Science, or the BSc. It's a grouping of biology and medicine courses, or papers, and it's taught by two faculties at the university, the Faculty of Science and the Faculty of Medical and Health Sciences. Because of that, it's taught at two different campuses, the City campus and Grafton. The papers within the biomedical science specialization are fun, interactive, and they're applied learning for health careers. You can find out a little bit more about biomedical science in this 5-minute video. It was recorded a few years ago, but it's still relevant now. Just follow this link below. You can enter biomedical science through a rank score threshold, which is it places biomed as a competitive degree. There are 605 domestic spots and 30 international spots in 2025, which is when I'm recording this video. You can follow this link for further information on the number of places in the year that you're watching this video. There are no required subjects to enter biomed. However, there are some recommended subjects that we suggest that you take so that you'll do well once you enter into biomed. These are biology, chemistry, physics, English or an English-rich subject, and statistics and/or calculus are optional. You may be considering whether to take the BSc in Biomedical Science or the Bachelor of Health Sciences. And in particular, you might be thinking about these two degrees as potential ways to enter into a clinical program. So there are some differences between the two. There are different numbers of places available. The rank score requirements differ slightly between the two, with BSc Biomed being a slightly higher threshold, slightly more competitive entry. The recommended school subjects are very similar, although we do recommend that you take at least level 2 physics for biomedical science. And then you'll see that there are 4 papers shared between the two programs. These are the 4 core courses to be considered for clinical entry. And then there are 4 papers that differ between the two programs. You'll also notice that after that first year, if you are seeking entry into one of the clinical programs, while both of the degrees will enable you to apply for medicine or pharmacy, only the Bachelor of Science, Biomedical Science, offers you the chance to apply for optometry or medical imaging. So biomed can take you various places. Within the university, you can complete your biomed degree and then go on to do postgraduate study, including master's and PhD. Or you could complete your first year of the BSc Biomed and enter into a clinical program, or you could complete your whole BSc Biomed and enter a clinical program as a postgraduate. So I'll talk through that a little bit more slowly here. If you do your first year of the BSc Biomed and you're really interested in entering one of the clinical programs and you've done well in those 4 core courses, you have good grades, you may be invited or given an offer into one of these clinical programs. Those are the Bachelor of Medical Imaging Science, Bachelor of Optometry, Bachelor of Pharmacy, and the MBCHB, which is medicine. If you really have your heart set on one of those clinical programs, but you're not offered entry after the first year, you might elect to finish your BSc Biomed degree and attempt to enter into one of those clinical programs as a postgraduate. That's probably the less popular route. Most of our entry into clinical programs is at undergraduate level, but there is still that option to enter as a postgrad. If you've done your BSc Biomed Year 1 and you think, actually, there's another BSc program that I'm more interested in, you can transfer into one of those programs. There are some that have quite a lot of overlap with the BSc Biomed. The papers will be similar. There are also further options here. And if you need help in transferring into another BSc program, working out what papers you should take and how to catch up, feel free to contact Rochelle or I. Most of the talk today will be focused on what happens or how you can stay in biomed and continue your entire undergraduate degree as a biomedical student. So you would do years 1 to 3 in biomed, where from year 2 onwards, there's the option to elect one of these pathways of related papers along a theme or a specific health interest. And as I'll share with you on the next slide, you can take one or none or a number of these pathways. So within Biomed, the pathways are listed and a bit more information is given at this link here. But there are 9 pathways: anatomical imaging science, cancer biology and therapeutics, cardiovascular biology, cellular and molecular biomedicine, genetics, infection and immunity, neuroscience, nutrition and metabolism, and reproduction and development. I've actually used AI to make this mash-up image by putting all of these 9 pathways into AI and asking for an image to be spat out. And it looks like a bit of a horror show. But if you decide not to take one of the biomed pathways, if you decide to take a few papers from among the various pathways and make a bit of a biomed mashup of your own, that would be considered biomedical science general. And I assure you, it's not a horror show. So if you're wondering, must you choose a pathway? No. They are simply advisement pathways. They're going to help you nurture and further your specific interests in something like neuroscience or cancer. They're no longer named on your degree, although they were in previous years. So you can choose whichever papers you're interested in, and the pathways are to help you take sets of papers that are related and might help further you to enter into a specific career. So you can wait until year 3 to choose a set of papers from one of those advisement pathways, but just be mindful that they have prerequisites. So if you're thinking about taking papers in year 3, make sure that in year 2 you're taking the correct prerequisite papers to be able to enter those. Will you be disadvantaged if you don't follow one of these advisement pathways? Well, it really depends on what career you choose. I'm a neuroscientist, and for neuroscience, it's of great benefit to have taken as many of those neuroscience-related papers within the biomed degree as possible. And there are other career options where you don't necessarily need to be taking papers that all relate to a specific interest. So that really depends on what career you choose. And as this talk goes along, we'll talk about a number of different careers that emerge from the BSc Biomed. In your 3rd year, you will complete a capstone paper. If you are remaining in biomed, that will be Biomed 399, but all of the capstone papers have this 399 number. In a capstone paper, you'll put skills you've learned in years 1 to 3 into practice. You have a capstone mentor, you work in groups of about 10 students, and you'll attend seminars and workshops. So it's a little bit different from other types of courses at the university. You're practicing your scientific analysis, critique, and communication, and you're getting a chance to integrate societal issues into your science. This will really prepare you for joining the workforce, and it's a chance to practice your evaluation and understanding of the science environment around you. If you then continue on into postgraduate studies from the BSc Biomed, you may choose to do the Bachelor of Biomedical Science Honours, the PG DipSci, or the Masters in Biomedical Science. These have different entry requirements, which you can find the most up-to-date information at this link below. You might also decide you don't want to do your postgraduate studies in biomed. You might like to think about other postgraduate programs. There are more, but I've listed audiology, forensic science, and speech language therapy here as some examples that might follow on quite nicely from an undergraduate degree in biomedical science. And then, of course, there's the option of doing a PhD. So what careers are there in biomed? You can become a research assistant or research scientist and work for a university, a private company, or a Crown Research Institute. If you stay at the university, you might become a tutor or a professional teaching fellow. These are professional staff roles which involve teaching and service. You might instead become an academic, which is what I am. I have highlighted associate professor here, but the difference here is that we have a research component to our work as well as teaching and service. Alternatively, you might like to get into science writing, editing, or reporting. So think about the people that write science articles for the New Zealand Herald, for example. You might work for a scientific journal, an editing company, or a news outlet. You could also become a science communicator or educator who explains science to the general public or teaches in an education institute. So that's taking science written in more difficult, specific terminology or jargon and putting that into lay language that the average person can understand. Other jobs include quality assurance analyst or policymaker. That would be relevant to the pharmaceutical industry, helping companies to meet specific standards or creating policies. You might go into clinical trials management, coordinating clinical trials of new drugs, or you might want to become a sales or management representative working for a private health equipment or reagent company and selling things to the other people on this list. So let's have a look at how those careers might play out depending on which biomedical science pathway you've taken. One of the pathways, of course, is cancer biology and therapeutics, where cancer is New Zealand's leading cause of death. This pathway asks questions like, what are the environmental and genetic risk factors for cancer? It looks at DNA damage and repair, and what does cancer look like in a cell? So cell and tumor morphologies, with a view to developing cancer diagnostics and treatments. I did have an image here, but it's not functioning, I'm afraid. It shows melanoma metastases in the brain, where those lesions are characterized by hyperplasia, extreme cell growth, and new vessel growth, where those vessels are damaged and they tend to bleed into the brain. So some of those careers might include working in the cancer service as a family history assessor, coordinating clinical research, educating people about cancer health, or getting into drug development that might use aspects of pharmacology and cancer immunology. And an example of someone who's working in this space is Dr. Kimiora Henare. He is a Māori cancer leader and researcher at the University of Auckland. He did the biomedical science cancer specialty pathway several years ago. The genetics pathway looks at how our DNA shapes who we are and how we function. It asks how much of our DNA is useful versus junk, and how do cells actually translate the genetic code into actions. We also, through this pathway, can understand more about whether genetic variation is harmless or harmful, or a mixture of both, with a view to understanding genetic diseases and helping to develop therapies. An example of some wonderful work that's being done by people at the University of Auckland in the genetic space is this work by PhD student John Hunt. He has looked at skin cells from a patient who has an absence of this protein collagen 7 in the skin. And this causes a devastating skin disease. But he's been able to use gene editing called CRISPR to restore the level of collagen 7 to a level very similar to healthy control skin. A set of genetics careers you might consider include genetics research and development, genetics for agribusiness, very big in New Zealand, genetic testing, clinical genetics, or genetic counselling. And an example of someone in a genetics career from the University of Auckland is Dr. Jimmy Kwang Sien Hu. And Dr. Hu is now an assistant professor in biosystems and function at UCLA in America. Another example is Dr. Pippa Granger. She is in New Zealand. She's a scientist unit manager at Lab Plus, working on diagnostic genetics, and she actually entered that career through a biotechnology degree. But the biomedical science degree could equally qualify you for such a job. In the infection and immunity pathway, we look at how microbes and viruses have challenged human health and our immune systems for millennia. The questions this pathway asks are, how do these microbes and viruses evade or succumb to host immune systems? understanding what their origins are, and understanding immunological disorders, autoimmunity, and cancer immunology. And this pathway has application in developing immunotherapies and targeting infectious diseases. You might have a career following on from this pathway in cancer immunotherapeutics. You might become a medical lab scientist in hematology, for example. You might be involved in drug development for things like rheumatic fever, COVID, or other hematological applications. You might be involved in the allergy service. Another example of a person who's gone on from biomed and has gone into a career is Dr. Nicola Jackson. She did the immunology pathway and is now the grants manager for Aotearoa clinical trials in New Zealand. The neuroscience pathway considers that brains are the ultimate living computer. I tend to agree with this, being a neuroscientist myself. Brains are complex, they're beautiful, they're unique, but they can be flawed, particularly when affected by neurodegenerative diseases. So this pathway looks at how brain structures support really complex functions, in particular looking at what cell types there are in the brain and what they do. And this is looking at the brain throughout development, aging, and disease. Here are some examples, or here's an example of an image from my lab. This is from my PhD student, Mirren Merkler, who has stained a human brain with motor neuron disease and found protein aggregates laden throughout the cerebellum. Neuroscience careers might include remaining at the university, as I have done, becoming an associate professor. We might be involved in neurology clinical trials, neurodegeneration research as a postdoctoral researcher. You might become a lecturer. You might be involved in drug development, including psychiatric drugs or even gene therapies for neurodegeneration. Dr. Justin Rustenhoven went through the biomedical science neuroscience pathway and became a postdoctoral researcher at the Kipnis Lab, a very well-respected lab at Washington University, and he's now established his own lab at the University of Auckland. So in terms of your biomedical science degree, have a look at the planner. There's these 4 core courses that you will take that could enable you to enter a clinical program, but then the other papers here are also compulsory, including Waipapa Taumataro. So this first year is mapped out for you. If you stay in biomed, then you'll go on to sit biosci papers, medsci papers, quantitative biology, and to then choose papers that either align with one of those biomedical science pathways, or maybe you'd like to mix and match. Just make sure that at stage 2, you complete the prerequisite papers so that you can take the papers you want to take in stage 3. Remember, at stage 3, you also have that capstone paper, Biomed 399, that will enable you to really bring together all your learning from the previous 3 years. If you would like any more information about biomed, feel free to contact me or contact Rochelle. We are really happy to talk more about biomed. We're both biomed graduates from the University of Auckland. We really love this degree and we'd like to support you in any way we can to thrive in the BSc Biomed. Thank you.